All right, to start with, we need to look at the minutes from March 10th, and that's where we last met 1 week ago. Please review those, and if there are any additions or corrections, bring them forward at this time. Can I have a motion for approval of those minutes? Representative Blacks.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve the minutes as printed.
Is there a second? Second from Representative Pickard. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to bring back or potentially talk about Senate Bill 184. As we last met, we had laid that on the table. There's a motion to remove it from the table.
Mr. Chair, I move that we remove Senate Bill 184 from the table and discuss it.
Is there a second? Second from Representative Stogsdale. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. So we're on Senate Bill 184. And as you see in your minutes, we had an amendment that we were discussing at the time. We'll go back to that. Or Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it is in order, I would actually like to offer a substitute amendment to the bill.
I believe it's an order. The maker of the prior amendment is not here in the committee today. According to Robert's rules and the committee rules, I believe it's in order for a substitute motion to be made. Is that right, Cal?
Committee Rule 12 states that a substitute motion is in order, but no additional substitute motion shall be in order until the prior substitute motion is disposed of.
Okay. Representative Vaughn, you can bring your substitute motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Kyle, if you could please distribute the amendment. So after we had a really robust committee discussion, I did reach out to Representative Blex to work on a compromise. And I think what we kind of decided, as a compromise was to do a graduated increase so that the increase would not be an immediate impact on the surcharge, but instead would raise it to 3% this year. So that would be a 0.5% increase, and then it would raise it 0.5% every 2 years until I believe 2032, if I'm doing my math correctly, in which it would at that time reach the 5% for the 2.5% increase total. So that is the amendment I would like to offer instead as a compromise amendment.
Is there a second on this amendment? Seconded by Representative Stogsdale. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Representative Blex?
Well, we did have a good discussion, and I do believe a gradual increase is appropriate. However, after doing a lot of research on this about what the cost of the machines are and the investment and using chloroethylene, commonly known as PERC, as the best cleaner, if we follow this same line of increasing the funding for this funding to fund this fund, then basically what we're doing is we're punishing people of sins of the past, and KDHE should probably take a dock in salary, because that's exactly what we're doing, because under KDHE rules of that 1970s and 1990s, they didn't have any guidelines. They was dumping them out in the alleys, and so KDHE failed, EPA failed, in my opinion, and so here's what we're doing. If we get crazy with this, we're punishing people of the sins of the past, and those people are no longer here. And like I say, because it was appropriate during the 70s to 80s to do what was done that caused the problem. You know, so KDHE, EPA failed. So should we dock their salaries or put a surcharge on them? Because that's exactly what we're doing to the dry cleaner operation. And so that's my point. However, I did agree with an increment, a little more reluctant on the every 2 years, but I do think the fund, we do need to clean those sites up. And so I'm good with this, I guess, halfway.
Any other discussion? Representative Helgerson. Hellwig, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the fact that we need to clean these sites up, but I just want to reiterate my point from last meeting. I'll just say we cannot tax ourselves into prosperity. This is a problem that's been going on since the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. KDHE has failed in this aspect, and we're punishing the dry cleaners. So for that, I will be against the amendment and the bill, probably.
Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I appreciate that a compromise was reached on this bill. When we have town halls, I always say this is the best committee in this building because we move forward on one goal, and that is protecting our water sources.
Kyle, go ahead.
Hi. So I wanted to circle back to the procedural question and amend my previous statement. So substitute motions are in order. However, another rule states that amendments to motions are not in order except upon consent of the member making the motion and his or her second. And I double checked, a substitute motion is a subset of an amendment to a motion. So I think the committee should go back and receive the consent of the member of the original motion, who I believe was Representative Essex, who brought the Wassinger amendment, and her second before going to the substitute motion.
Representative Essex.
Last I heard, that amendment was withdrawn. Is that incorrect? Do I need to withdraw that original amendment that I brought?
Officially here in committee, yes.
Okay.
You need to withdraw it.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw that amendment.
Okay. Who was the second at that time? Okay, we ran out of time. So I believe the substitute motion is now in, the original amendment has been withdrawn. And we're on the next. It's a straight amendment. Correct. Okay, all this procedural stuff, we're all here now. Any further discussion on this? Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions. One is on page 7, the 3% that we talked about versus the 5 in the original bill is part of this discussion, part of this amendment. Is that correct? And then second question is on page 8, where we've added the increments step rate increases. My question is, what is the rationale for every 2 years versus annually? And I just a clarification and for understanding, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, and thank you, Representative, for the question. So to confirm, it would raise it to the 3%, so that is part of the amendment. And then the 2% was part of the compromise. I think I would prefer to raise it annually. I think the other representative indicated he would probably prefer every 2 years. So that was the compromise that we reached.
Any further questions? Representative Blex.
Comment getting back every 2 years was even a little sudden for me, but I did compromise on that. And basically, to have those companies have to convert from some of that other alternative machines is very expensive. These things, if you haven't seen them, if you can imagine a tank-built super washer, and very expensive, and they can be converted, but it does cost a lot of money. So that was my rationale. Even every 2 years is at least giving them a little time to phase out something. So that was my logic on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Seeing none, you want to move your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, I appreciate that any tax increase of any kind is going to be a challenging issue in this body. I think ultimately, though, KDHE has followed the law as it was set by the EPA, and I believe in the 70s was when a lot of these rules started being passed. And this funding mechanism was the compromise that was reached by the industry. So this was an industry-led initiative, and I think, if we don't continue to modernize the existing funding mechanism, then we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, and that's going to mean either using SGF funds. So instead of making this an industry-specific solution, it's going to be something that affects all taxpayers in Kansas. Or because these are Superfund eligible sites, it would mean the EPA coming in and doing it for us, which I don't think anybody wants. So I think this is a good compromise that leads to a gradual increase, hopefully won't shock the industry or consumers of the industry, but ultimately allows for this mechanism to continue operating in a way that can continue to address these 226 sites that we know exist and need to be addressed. So with that, I move the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think it's important that we address this problem, but, just looking at the dynamics of this with a shrinking industry, hello? Where we have a shrinking industry and the number of sites we have to clean, this is only going to be a partial fix to the problem. So I'm in favor of going ahead and doing something, but I think looking forward, we're going to have to come up with another plan. Other areas this has worked, particularly cleaning up the carbon tetrachloride problem around abandoned elevators, but a very small tax on grain where we have many millions of bushels has supplied enough money to go and correct these sites. But in the dry cleaning industry, where we've got a shrinking industry, I think in the future we're going to have to look for something else. This is a good step, but I don't think this is the total solution. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I think we're ready for Representative White. You want to close?
Yeah, I'd like to move this bill out of this committee. Senate Bill 184, I motion to move out
Okay,
as amended.
thank you. We'll go to a voice vote on this. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second? Representative Vaughn seconds. I'm sorry. All right, we'll move to a voice vote on this. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? I believe the motion carries. Would anyone like their vote recorded? Representative Hellwig and Fairchild, both noes. Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Next, we want to take up Senate Bill 317, one that we heard a week ago. What's the wishes of the committee? Is there a motion to move forward or not? Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm pretty divided on this, and I would be interested in having a discussion as a committee. I did prepare amendments in case we did decide to work this bill based on a lot of the feedback that we received from conferees. I think, you know, after having had the hearing and going online and doing some research, you know, I think rules and regs are still in process, but there are guidelines that are publicly available on their water office's website for the criteria that they're using for grants, for the process for applications, for the actual application submittal. A lot of the things that are outlined in the bill are already being done. I think what it will do, however, based on the criteria and some of the additional conditions that are laid out, is make it much harder for small towns who this program was designed for and who have largely benefited from this bill. I think the way that it's written currently will make it much harder for them to access these grants. So I think if we move it forward, I think that's maybe something we should consider in any amendments that are brought. So I'll just kick off the conversation there and see what the wishes of the committee are.
I'm sorry, Kyle, would you explain this? It's been a whole week and I want to refresh everybody's mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 317 would provide additional requirements for applications to the Water Technical Assistance Fund and the Water Projects Grant Fund, including the requirement that applicants demonstrate the availability of a 25-year water supply. It would prohibit grants for issues related to water rights that are impaired by another water right. It would prioritize applications based off of various criteria and mandate annual submissions on September 15th. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Kyle on this? Seeing none, we have I'm sorry, Representative Hellwig.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, a clarification in the language of the bill. This is now requiring that preliminary engineering reports are done prior to application now, where before the technical assistance grant could have been used to do that engineering report?
Yes, specifically for the Water Technical Assistance Fund, the bill would require that any application submitted include a complete preliminary engineering report.
So that would be changing from the way it is now.
Correct.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the very same concern. The only thing that made me feel slightly better about that, in the report, it does say that the Water Technical Assistance Grant can be used to help complete a preliminary engineering report, but it cannot otherwise be granted until one is complete. So that, I still share that concern, but that made me feel slightly better about it.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering why we didn't get a copy of this bill handed out to us when we got a copy of the SB 184 handed out.
Yeah, they're in last week's folder. Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really have a hard time supporting this bill because I represent small communities, and I think it'll hurt them. There was some amendments that were proposed if this bill does get worked. And I did not clear this with the chair, but I want to do some sort of conceptual, we're out of time, a conceptual amendment to strip everything out of there except for the extending the sunset on, what's the bill? 2302. And I think that may be overstepping my bounds and I'm out of time, but that's my feeling. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I believe there might be some amendments out there. Does anyone want to bring those forward? Representative Fairchild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would second his conceptual amendment.
Rep-
You know, I think as we work this bill, you know, I'm very much in favor of helping these small municipalities because I've got a lot of them in my district. But I think another thing we've got to keep in mind, there's a certain threshold where these towns are not going to exist in any functioning form going forward. You know, I can remember when I moved to Garnett in 84, Selma was still an existing town. There were about 20 houses there and a little resort that was running at the rock pit, and, you know, had some cabins and everything. But today, there's just what's the remnant of about 6 houses. And so, and that's not anybody's fault. That's just the way things have gone. And I look at other towns around me, and so we've got limited funds. We don't have enough funds to help everybody. We're only helping a very small percent. And so I think we need to have a policy to help those that have a reasonable chance of survival and not put all of our funds into these very small municipalities that have not much chance of survival going forward. We help them a lot, but we only help, you know, a handful of people, whereas some of the larger towns that, you know, are going to have a future going forward, it would seem like it would be better policy because we will help more people and deal with the water problem for a larger number of people. But these are, you know, towns that don't have the ability to hire engineers. They don't have the taxing authority to bring enough money to fix their problems. So I think this bill has some merit in that it attempts to look at a little larger municipalities that are going to survive going forward. Thank you.
Representative Blacks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we do work this bill, I do have a couple amendments, and I'm not too concerned about getting public. But, you know, looking back, when we passed 2302, we quickly shoved it into the Kansas Water Office's lap with very little increase in personnel. I think they've done a great job with what they've had. We begrudgingly give them 2. They didn't even have them hired yet. And that was we almost didn't get to do that because of a bill on the floor that was that was going to cut state employees. And I think they've done good. While I support a priority and a defined priority, I think they probably got that. We probably need it written down. I think 2302, they've done a good job, an excellent job, matter of fact, of working between the respective agencies with KDHE and Department of Ag. So, you know, my concern with this bill was the fact that, you know, the failure of a low-income population. I don't think we need to bring social justice into this committee. We've already worked well together, and so my amendment would have taken that out, and I believe even though it probably wouldn't have changed things, move the process of the regional coordination, which I think is very important for water. That's very important to be able to do that up a higher priority. I know they're all equal, but sometimes we read accordingly, and to do that. And I also was against the funding be prioritized for counties or areas that had a population growth, because we don't know everything. A business can come into a very small town and we can have a population growth pretty quick. And a lot of these counties are struggling. Those people are still there struggling. So I didn't like that part. My amendment, if we worked the bill, would have taken that out. So that's kind of where I'm at on. I can live with this. I don't have any problem with the 8,000, even though the bulk of my cities are less than that. I have one city that I share. I guess if you share half of it, it's not 8,000, but it's close. And, you know, I don't have necessarily a problem with that, but the small communities do really struggle. And the technical assistant is critical. There's obviously, we all know there's not enough money to deal with that. And there needs to be more. Mr. Chairman had a bill proposed to give a little more. That didn't go anywhere this year, but that is a priority, and we're going to need a lot more. But I'm kind of, if we can get the things out that I had the amendments on, I'm probably good with it. But either way, we definitely need to extend the sunset.
Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to echo Representative Blex's comments on the water office. I think they do discern on the small communities that are dying, or my home community's population of 800. It is the county seat. It will survive one way or the other, but we do need help. And I think the water office takes in an account of that. At some point when the population gets down to 50 or 30 or 6, I think there's help there that they convert to a rural water district. I want to leave it up to the water office to discern the needs out there. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I need to voice to the committee that in discussion with people over on the Senate side, they have already passed this through their committee and across the floor. Senate Bill 317 came to us. They're willing to allow us some small changes to it, and think we can work some things out in conference committee if this has an opportunity to pass this committee and go to the House floor this next week. So there's still some life in this bill. I want you to understand that. We can do a few things as far as amendments that I think we can work out in conference committee, but I want to tell you what the situation is right now. Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be in favor of moving the bill out, and I don't have any big questions or concerns about amendments until I would see them and so forth. But what I put my stock in is conferees of Kansas Rural Water and Kansas municipal utilities. As much or more than any other conferee, because I've had firsthand experience with both of those organizations, and so I put a lot of stock into what they say. And Rural Water came out very supportive. Kansas Municipal had some potential amendments. I haven't brought any amendments for this. So I don't know whether we'd want to deal with those, especially based on what you just said, Mr. Chair. But the Rural Water Association, and I appreciate Representative White's comment about some of the communities may have to form a rural water district. We're in the process of doing that with one of our subdivisions as we speak out in my area. So I would be supportive of this legislation and primarily based on testimony of those two conferees.
Okay. Representative Essex.
I was just wondering if that was a motion, because I said I would second it.
Any further discussion?
But I have no problem of making that into a motion that we pass the Senate Bill 317 favorably from the committee.
Okay. Second. Representative Essex seconded. Okay. So we're on the main motion. Representative Vaughn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was kind of curious to see the will of the committee, but I don't, with that, I have an amendment, and we can go in whatever order. Is that okay?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment. If Kyle pass those out.
Okay.
He's giving me that deer in the headlights look.
Representative Black's
Yeah.
first.
Appreciate Kyle's overtime work, Mr. Chair.
Kyle, do you want to explain what this amendment actually does?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the underlying bill, for a municipality with more than 50,000 residents to be eligible to receive a grant through either fund, they must first demonstrate a threat to public health or demonstrate that failure to complete a project creates a disproportionate burden on low-income populations. The amendment would strike the language regarding the low-income populations on pages 3 and 7 of the bill. The amendment would also make changes to the scoring matrices for both funds by completely removing the long-term population trends category and moving the regional cooperation category further up the list. Though I'll note that the position of a scoring category on the list doesn't make any substantive difference. Each category is scored on a scale of 0 to 5. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to continue, Representative Blacks?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, I think on page 3 with 15, 14 and 15, I think we just need a period at the end of the sentence. If it demonstrates a threat to public health, it don't make any difference whether you got money or whether you don't. It has nothing to do with low-income population. It's still public health. So I don't think we need to go there. If you go over on page 4, long-term population trends, basically, that's kind of, that can change. You kind of heard me say that earlier, so I'm not going to belabor that. And certainly the regional cooperation is very important to me. I think that's the key. We've seen that in Coffeyville and Caney, having that line. It's going to be a way of the future, so I think that's is an important thing. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I think we just need to pass it as amended if the committee is favorable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions or comments on this? Representative Featherston?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out that it was pointed out in committee last time that the poorest parts of Kansas are rural Kansas minus Riley County. And I guess since I represent the richest county in Kansas, I should support this because you're going to prioritize Johnson County over your small rural counties. But I'm actually not sure I'm in favor of that.
Representative Hellwig?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on the amendment. Part of that says, fulfill housing needs that have been identified by a housing study conducted within 10 years immediately preceding. Is this requiring a housing study now for any of the applications?
The reviser may be able to help me out, but I'm not reading it that way.
So that would be one of the categories that's considered when determining eligibility, saying the consideration shall be given to projects that support regional economic growth including the development of reinvestment housing projects, workforce housing, or other residential activities that help fulfill housing needs that have been identified by any housing study conducted within the 10 years immediately preceding the date the application was submitted. So it may be the case in a lot of instances where there has been a study that's already been created or done that they could use to support their eligibility. Otherwise, they may want to conduct a study, but it's not mandatory.
Further questions? Seeing none. Representative Blex, you want to move your amendment?
I move my amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll proceed to a voice vote. All those in, I'm sorry, second. I think I heard Representative Essex second this most. Again. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We're back on the main motion as amended. Representative Vaughn.
Okay, now I have an amendment. And this would be the longer amendment, Kyle. Okay, so as Kyle's passing it out, I can kind of just describe the background. So this was my attempt to incorporate all of the feedback that we received in testimony. So I think more than anything in the bill, what will make it difficult for small towns to be eligible for these grants is the criteria that were used for prioritization. So I've tried to maintain the intent of the bringer of the bill while incorporating the testimony we received and trying to even the playing field a little bit for the people who would be eligible for these grants. So I do apologize, it's a larger amendment, but I will walk through all those changes and then open it up for Kyle to explain anything that I missed. But first and foremost, okay, let me get the right thing open here. The first thing we strike is on page 3. So this was feedback we received from a couple of people in testimony, and then, can I share about, what was it, Austin, the town?
Randolph.
Yes, so hopefully it's okay if I share this, but Randolph, the town that we had previously heard from, that had thanked us for this grant, had reached out to the chair and indicated that this provision specifically would almost make it impossible for them to receive grants in the future. So this is striking that any application that is related to the distribution of supply of water shall demonstrate that 25-year supply of water at minimum is available, or the project specified in the application will extend the applicant's available water supply beyond 25 years. And I want to say, I think in theory, I support this. Like I support this idea that we should be doing statewide water planning. I think we generally want to be increasing the available water supply for all of our communities. I think 25 years is a good goal, but I think that should be a program goal. It should not be a requirement to participate in the program, because I think that will be what we are hoping to accomplish with many of these projects, but I don't think that should eliminate potential applicants from the applicant pool. So that's why I took that portion out. I think that makes it a little bit more of an even playing field. And then the next change is down on line 36. So previously it had just said, in any year where applications exceed the amount of funds or capacity to provide services, eligible applications shall be prioritized based on the criteria. My general feeling was that if we're going to evaluate some according to this criteria, we should evaluate all according to this criteria. So it's just generally saying applications shall be prioritized according to the criteria, which I have also amended on the next page. So I think Representative Blex's amendment fits fairly well into what I also have in my amendment, so I think those will integrate. But just kind of working through each of these. So for public health, there was feedback and testimony that it was uncertain what an imminent threat to public health meant. So I just struck the word imminent, and then I specified that that could include, but is not limited to, violations of KSA 65-162A, which is like the contamination law and aligned with EPA standards, or conditions that have caused or may lead to violations of state or federal drinking water standards. So I just changed that to make it more specific to what the existing law is. And then B was the one that I really changed. I think this is the one I had the most heartburn about. essentially, the original provision would require that really small municipalities submit a litany of financial information that they may or may not have, according to Kansas Municipal Utilities, in addition to requiring that they have, or that they will demonstrate that they have enacted policies that will adequately support and maintain current and future infrastructure, which I think has value, but a lot of these small towns do not have active asset management plans, which will make them less competitive as applicants, again, for this pool. So for this and the next talking point, I used as a frame of reference what we do for the Build Kansas Advisory Committee, and I've incorporated some of that in addition to some of the criteria that the Water Office currently uses for their criteria. So I do think it's relevant to consider existing resources. You know, what is your capacity to do this on your own or not? So I have changed it to say the section is called Existing Resources. The applicant shall provide relevant information concerning the municipality's finances to demonstrate the need for project funding. So this is, you know, just essentially, you know, what are they currently taxing their citizens for the utilities? Do they have the ability to tax more, or will that be an undue burden on the citizens of the ability to fund a capital project like this? And then factors shall include, but are not limited to, demographic or community economic information that would affect the municipality's ability to pay for the proposed project without grant funding pursuant to this section. So assessing their current resources and how that may apply to the need for a grant. I also agreed with Representative Blex. I struck the long-term population trends. I think there, as Representative Gardner had mentioned, I think there is a place for recognizing growth, like, you know, and considering growth. And so I actually lumped those sections together. So just to jump down a little bit, subsection E, economic impact, I put population growth in there. So the municipality can demonstrate that the proposed project's importance for the growth of the community, new residential housing projects of an existing economic activity, or for the recruitment of a new economic activity. So this one criteria considers all of those things. So growth is still a factor, growth is still considered, but instead of weighting it under 2 criteria, it's weighted under 1 criteria, which I think makes it a more even playing field for smaller towns. Then to jump back, this idea that the additional funding sources, that was the other one we received a lot of feedback about in testimony. And I really hated this idea of a sliding scale of, you know, your ability to contribute up to 60% will influence your rating on whatever, you know, prioritization scale that we've created. So what we have done in the Build Kansas Advisory Committee is, yes, we want you to show that you have skin in the game. You know, I think that's important for many communities. And in Build, we have done that either through in-kind or monetary contributions. And for them, we use a 5% threshold. So we would like to see a 5% in-kind or monetary contribution as a part of your application. There were a lot of numbers being thrown around, so I didn't include a number, but I did say relevant factors shall include, but not be limited to, the size of such contribution relative to the applicant's request and such applicant's ability to contribute. So it is both considering if you are a large town and you have the capacity to contribute a lot, then that should be reflected in your match. If you're a small town and you do not have the ability to contribute a lot, then that should also be considered. So that was my hope, to strike a balance with this idea that you should have skin in the game. But if you literally are a small town and you cannot afford anything, that skin in the game could be you using city employees to help implement this program in the form of an in-kind contribution, and that would count. So that was the change I made there. We've already talked about subsection E. To Representative Hellwig's point, I also did not, this idea of a housing study or these additional criteria under regional cooperation seemed very specific to me, and I just was not sure what the background was on that. So I struck that from the regional cooperation point. I'm open to keeping that if that's something that people find compelling, or that could be put back in conference, but I didn't see the need for the hyperspecificity of that. Personally, in the Water Office's previous criteria, I liked that it considered conservation. So if you're a town and this is going to help you conserve water through the implementation of this project and extend the life of your resource, then I think that should be something that is considered. And I think that fit in nicely with Senator Titus's extreme weather resiliency point. So I just expanded that to also include conservation. And then lastly, a criteria that the Water Office has used and that was not included in this bill is the concept of emergent issues. So you are Caney, Kansas, and you have run out of water and you need emergency assistance. This is not a future planning issue. This is an issue right now. You need the ability to hook up a pipe to Deerfield, Kansas. That would be included here, where it says the municipality can demonstrate how the proposed project addresses emergency circumstances the community is facing or will be facing related to the insufficient access to water-related infrastructure or resources. So that was a very long explanation. Those changes are reflected both for the water technical assistance grants and for the water project grant fund. So with that, Mr. Chair, I open up to Kyle to explain further or for questions.
Anything further, Kyle?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further explanation.
Oh, boy. Are there any questions or comments on this amendment? Representative White.
I think I need to put this to the whole committee. I don't understand a housing study. Who does that? Is there an official housing? Couldn't the city council just look at each other and say, we need houses? And that's pretty much it. I'm thinking small town. So maybe Representative Essex could fill me in or somebody.
Representative Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Housing studies are just common to try to determine where population is growing and where, if there's enough land, and it looks at all kinds of things. It's done usually by a third party. The way I understand this bill is not that you have to do a housing study. It is taking everything into consideration to make those decisions. It says a housing study conducted, not have to conduct a housing study. So I think we're misinterpreting that unless somebody tells me otherwise. But I think we're putting too much into this housing study part of the bill because it's something that is available to cities to help them project growth. That's all it is.
Representative White.
So when the mayor of Randolph was here and said, we need more houses, that's pretty much a housing study for a small community. Sure. And they have land, it's right at the edge of town. So I don't see why that wouldn't qualify. Thank you.
Just to add that I actually was considering Randolph's testimony when I wanted to make sure to still include that. So I took out the housing study portion, but under the economic impact, I did leave new residential housing projects in because I think if they can show this will allow us to develop new water supply for these new housing projects, that should be something that's considered because I think that could be an asset for the community.
Anything further? Representative Pishney.
Just a point of clarification with, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but in Finney County, they use they do periodically, I don't know if it's every 5 or 10 years, a housing study, but it's for the whole county. It includes Holcomb and Garden City, and it's called the CHAT study, C-H-A-T, but I can't remember what that stands for. But the point I want to make is, what it does is it takes the Randolph comment, we need more houses, and it quantifies it. It says, this is why you need more houses. These are the areas available infrastructure-wise and so forth. And yes, in the small communities, they may know that, but it's more anecdotal than it is data-driven. So to me, that's what the studies do include, and I'm not disagreeing with what's been said. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it can be very helpful, not just to a city, but to a county as well.
Any further comments? Representative Pickert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like your amendment very much, Lindsay. You put a lot of thought into it. And the Water Office has done a great job in awarding these monies to communities. But, you know, to have something in writing, to have something objective, I think is helpful. So anyway, very good.
Any further comments? Seeing none, I think we're ready to move. Would the carrier of the bill like to close?
Yes, I close.
Second, also. All those in favor of this amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Anyone want their vote registered? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Are there any other amendments or comments on the bill as it's been amended? Representative Vaughn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last amendment I have is one that was alluded to earlier, and this would be extending the sunset of the underlying bill. So with that, I think Kyle has that amendment. There was some confusion, and this is my fault in the drafting of the amendment, so it extends the sunset. It's my intent that that also obviously applies to the funds related to this program. So it does not increase the funds at all, as we had previously considered under a different bill, but it does extend the sunset of the underlying program until 2031, which was what was previously in House Bill 2558.
Okay, Cal, do you have any further explanation of this bill?
So this would add in 82A-955 and extend the sunset date of the fund to 2031. I'll leave it up to the will of the committee if you just want to consider the amendment as currently written or conceptually amend it so that it would reflect the extension of the funding. If the latter, the amendment would essentially look just like the first section of House Bill 2558, which the committee passed out in February, that specifically extends funding so that the last transfer of funds from the state general fund to the state water plan fund would be July 1, 2030. And then from there, monies would be transferred from the state water plan fund to the technical assistance fund and the project fund. And then those funds themselves would expire 2031. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the 2558 bill passed through this committee but did not proceed on the House floor. It would include a $25 million increase and the 3-year extension of the sunset. This amendment currently does not add any new money to it. It just extends it 3 years.
Correct, yes. So it would be basically section 1 of 2558, except it would not increase the amounts transferred. It would just keep the extension of the transfers.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for the benefit of the committee, Kyle, so I'm looking at attachment A. So you're talking about this conceptual part of this amendment would essentially just be, so where it says in the first paragraph, little a, and then on down where it says on July 1st, 2025 and July 1st, 2026, that would then say, oh no, and then the last sentence says it is the intent of the legislature to provide for the transfer from the state general fund to state water plan fund on July 1st, 2027. So that would then say and 2028, 2029, and 2030. Is that correct? Is that where that would go?
So the way that's worded, that it was worded in House Bill 2558, is that in that subsection A, you would strike the word on down through the end of that sentence, that whole first sentence would be deleted, and then the next sentence would be amended to say, on July 1, 2026, July 1, 2027, July 1, 2028, July 1, 2029, and July 1, 2030, the Director of Accounts and Reports shall transfer $35 million from the State General Fund to the State Water Plan Fund. The last sentence of that paragraph would be stricken. And then in paragraph B1, most of that first sentence would be stricken from the water plan through comma, except that if, and it would state when an appropriation is made for any fiscal year pursuant to subsection A on July 1 of such fiscal year or soon thereafter on such dates as monies are available, so on and so forth.
Okay, that is my intent as to what this amendment, that is my intent of what I want this amendment to do. So I guess it's a partial amendment in front of you, and then there's that conceptual aspect of it. But the intent is just to extend the sunset of the existing appropriated amounts through 2030, expiring or sunsetting in 2031. So that's my intent of the amendment.
Is there a second to this motion? Representative Blex, seconds. Any discussion or questions for Kyle? Seeing none, you can close on your amendment.
I close. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Are there any other amendments or suggestions to this entire bill? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After all these amendments, is this bill still worded in a way that's going to result in smaller towns receiving fewer of the grants than they're currently receiving?
What's your interpretation, Kyle? Well, I guess we do.
That is partially a policy issue that I don't want to encroach on, though I recall from some of the testimony that hinged around the prioritization of certain communities with a population of 8,000 or less, and under current law, it was 2,000 or less, and I don't believe any of the adopted amendments touch that portion.
Kyle, I believe I have an amendment. I intentionally let everybody else run with theirs, and Kyle can explain my very short amendment here. Kyle, would you explain this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The underlying bill states at the bottom of page 2 and at the top of page 3 that a minimum of 50% of the annual amount transferred to the Technical Assistance Fund shall be awarded to municipalities with fewer than 8,000 residents. The amendment would change this to say that a minimum of 60% of the transferred funds shall be awarded to municipalities with fewer than 2,000 residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Smaller communities and to, for the next few years at least, I think this needs to potentially be expanded in the future. I liked the impact that we've had on the smaller communities to this point, and so I wanted to continue that. Any questions? Representative Hellwig.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify, this is a minimum, not a maximum, right? So if the Water Office decided to do 80%, that's their prerogative.
I believe it says minimum, just a couple words in front of that. Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Representative Blacks?
Chair, this kind of negates the housing study conflict we talked about for a long time. Thank you.
Yes, it does. I think we need a motion to approve this. Representative White?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we amend the bill to your amendment.
Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Pishney. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I believe you can move your motion.
I move my motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We're back on the main motion again, after it's been amended 3 times, I believe. 4. My memory's short. Is there any more questions or comments on the main motion as amended? Seeing none?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out Senate Bill 317 favorably for passage as amended.
And the second agrees, so we'll move to a vote on this motion as made. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So we have covered both bills. I had. Doug did. Oh, Representative Pishney on the last, well, that was the last amendment. We'll sort that out. Committee, I had tried real hard to get us a time period to view the WID project over at Tuttle Creek. If you read last night in the news, they've had some problems. Since the water office is here today, I wonder if they would like to describe that to us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Connie Owen with the Water Office. And yes, intense weather over the weekend, particularly on Sunday, high winds and waves have resulted in a fuel tank, a refilling fuel tank, coming disconnected from the barge that it was on and going into the water. And the Corps of Engineers has been dealing with this from the get-go and notified emergency response and KDHE and our office. And they have crews out there and divers coming, and they are doing everything they can. They've had to wait a little while to be able to deal with it because the winds were still really high yesterday. So, of course, operations were supposed to begin today. That's not going to happen. But they're hopeful that they can get them started in the next day or so. And they will be monitoring. Their main concerns, of course, are public safety and making sure there's no negative environmental impact. At this time, we don't know the answer to that, but there is not any obvious concern that they're discerning. So this is a matter that is between the Corps of Engineers and the owner of the barge. And the Water Office is a partner with that, but we really are not a partner to the contract. So we are going to share information that we receive from the Corps as soon as we receive it. So we're just waiting on updates from them because they are really in charge of how this is handled going forward.
Thank you for the information. Representative Droege.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that update. I was curious, this barge is separate from the dredge. And second question is, how far out into that cove did it get before it lost its stability?
I can only answer one of those questions. It is separate from the barge. I do not know the exact location, but it was in the cove. And so the fuel tank is, according to the press release, under 20 feet of water in the cove.
Senator Vaughn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Connie. I just wanted to confirm, is the oil contained so far, or are you aware of any leaks?
They are in the process of trying to ascertain that. They have not reported any obvious signs of leaks that have any visible effects. That's their main concern, is hoping that that remains intact. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I would think if it was leaking, that film would come to the surface.
That's the impression. I don't want to get beyond the information that the Corps has provided to us, but so far they have not reported seeing any visible signs of concern.
Well, thank you for the report, just an update. And if they're supposedly going to run for 10 days and then shut down, and as they're analyzing everything downstream, and they intend to do another operation sometime this summer?
Yes, the demonstration project always had 3 dredging sessions. And so this is the second 10-day session. The third 10-day session will be in the summer, and those dates have yet to be finalized.
Thank you, Connie, appreciate it.
And we did send out information, hopefully you received it, to the committee members and other stakeholders and legislators. So as we get more information, we'll be sure and share that too.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you. So at this time, we don't have anything organized as a water committee for off-site interim committee. I'm still working with coordinating council. We did have 2 days approved earlier. I would like to do the WID project over there, and then our timing and accidents don't always line up, it seems like. If you get an opportunity to go by and watch it, Connie will keep us informed on when they are actually operating. At this time, I want to thank our staff for all the hard work. You can see how many amendments Kyle had to do over the last few days. That is part of the reason why we did not take this up on last Thursday. We also had about 4 members gone that day. I appreciate the committee's ability to stay with us and finish our work at this time. Heather, thank you very much. You've been a treasure to work with, and I appreciate everything, the resources we have down at Legislative Research. And sound, we've done an excellent job this year. I'm sorry the first time I didn't ask you to move the cameras. Since then, I think we've done a very good job when we're taking hand votes if we have to. And of course, Tony's been invaluable. He's been with the Water Committee how many years now, Tony? And we haven't worn him out yet. But I appreciate all the help and work that the staff has contributed to everything we've done. We've worked together very, very well. Committee, I appreciate the things that we've accomplished. We haven't gotten everything done that we'd all hoped for, but I think we've done very good work. I will let you go a whole 10 minutes early. And I appreciate and I encourage all of you to run, when you go home, run for re-election and come back with some good ideas for this committee. I think there's a lot of work on water yet to do within the state of Kansas. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.